Awesome. In previous class, we understood introduction to the Lakehouse. What we'll do is we'll take forward and understand some more aspects of the Lakehouse. Okay. What we understood in the previous class is we are talking about the modes. Okay. We are not talking about the modes. Okay. We're talking about the modes. There are two modes. One is Lakehouse mode, and the second one is SQL Analytics Endpoint mode. So what will we do with that? What will you do with that, Anna?
Based on our storage of files, we can choose which one we want.
Okay, got you. Okay, you understood the but. Okay. You choose, then what will you do next?
Create the Lakehouse
Yeah. Okay.
using the mode.
We will create the Lakehouse. We understood about the modes, but in order to use the modes, we have to create the Lakehouse, which we already discussed. Now, you created the Lakehouse. Vinith, what will you do after creating the Lakehouse?
We will import some files
Mhm.
and data to analyze them.
Absolutely. Okay. After creating the Lakehouse, we ingest the data into a Lakehouse, right? Ingest is different from inject. Okay. We are talking about the ingestion of the data. Okay. Don't get confused. Okay. And end up saying injection. It is ingestion, ingesting the data. Okay. So ingesting the data is getting the data from external source into the Lakehouse. So after creating the Lakehouse, we have to get the data into the Lakehouse. We have to ingest the data into the Lakehouse. And we can get the data from any sources. Okay. We can ingest the data from local files. They can be JSON, they can be CSV, they can be XML, they can be any type of files. We can also ingest the data from databases. Okay. RDBMS databases. Which are the RDBMS stores available in the market, Malini?
Oracle.
Yes, we can ingest the data from either Oracle or MySQL or SQL Server or SQLite or DB2, whichever the RDBMS which is being used by the organization. And also, we can ingest the data from API. Okay, that is Application Programming Interface. Okay, like one of the example is by using the REST API, we can get the data of ERP systems, or we can get the data from GitHub. By connecting to the ERP system through REST API, we can get the data into the Lakehouse. You guys are able to understand this, Parveen? ERP
Yes,
systems within the data is there. Okay, data can be in any format. It can be in table. There may be also way to export that as a files. Okay, so we'll connect to that through REST API and we'll ingest the data into the Lakehouse. So then one more very important thing is we can also look at different ways of ingesting the data into your Lakehouse. We can just upload the local files, or we can use the data flows Gen 2 to import and transform the data using Power Query. Okay, we are going to look at all of them, at least few of them as a part of the detailed lectures. But as of now, at a high level, we understood in the previous slide, we can import the local files, we can import the data from database, we can also import the data from APIs, through APIs. Now, how do you ingest? Okay, either you upload the data or you use the data flows Gen 2 module, which is available in the Fabric to import and transform the data using Power Query. Or you can use a notebooks. In notebooks, you can use a Apache Spark to ingest, transform, and load the data. Or you can use a data factory pipelines to load the data into the Lakehouse. Or you can also use the Spark job definitions to get the data into the Lakehouse through streaming. These are the different ways of ingesting the data into the Lakehouse. Okay, at least few of them we'll see that in detail in the upcoming classes. Okay, the question is, Anna, are these the only ways of getting the data into the Lakehouse?
No, sir.
Very good. Maybe based on my question, she understood. Okay. Then
So I think there are some tools also, like
tools we already discussed. Any other things, Shabna?
I understood one thing.
Mhm.
I have seen one of the component in Microsoft Fabric, that is ADF.
Mhm.
Using that, can we do the thing?
Yeah, I mean, see, we already discussed about that. That is a data factory.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We understood local file and all those things. All the data is more or less within the Fabric environment. What if the data is stored in the external source? Okay, we already discussed about this, right? Okay. We can also, if the data is not there within the environment of Fabric, okay, we can also access using the shortcuts. Okay. So shortcuts are useful when you need to source the data from a different storage account or even a different cloud provider. We did discuss about this during when we are discussing about the OneLake also, right? And what we can do is within the Lakehouse, we can create the shortcuts that point to the different storage accounts, other Fabric items like data warehouses, SQL databases, and other Lakehouses. Okay. See, the Fabric account in your Fabric account, which may be provisioned for Parveen, may be very different from the Fabric account provisioned for Malini, right? In order to access the data of Malini's Fabric Lakehouse, we can create a shortcut from Parveen's Lakehouse. Okay, that is what I am trying to say. And also, apart from that, even other cloud providers also. We are talking about the Microsoft. We can also establish the shortcuts to the other cloud providers like GCP, AWS, like that. Okay, and there are some good points about shortcuts. Okay, one is shortcuts will allow us to integrate the external data into our Lakehouse. That is the first important point. Seamless. Feels like you are working in the same environment because it is allowing us to create the shortcuts. Okay. Then data access is through when you are trying to access the other application or other accounts, you also need to take care of the permissions. So once you establish the permission from one tenant or one Fabric house to the other ones, the permissions are not asked again. There is a unified permissions. That is the second thing. And most important thing is shortcuts, whatever you have created, they appear like folders. Okay. They can be accessible either by Spark or SQL or real-time analytics or any other analysis services. They appear as a folders. What are the shortcuts you have created? Okay. So once you create the shortcuts, you can click on the folder. You can browse the data in that storage account. Okay, which is outside of your environment. Okay. So because it is allowing us to enable or create the shortcuts, the duplication will not happen. It is not that you have to copy the data from some other storage account and the duplication will not happen. Is efficient. It will save the cost. So these are the important points which will help us while creating the shortcuts. Okay. So Shabna, what will you do after ingestion?
Analysis, processing the data.
Absolutely right. After ingesting the data, what will you do? Will explore and transform the data. Okay. What we said is analysis, which is nothing but a transformation. Okay. So what we will do is Lakehouse is in a way can be used as a warehouse, right? In a way, it is not a warehouse, it is a Lakehouse where you can load the transform data into the Lakehouse. Okay. So before we load the transform data into the Lakehouse, what you can do is you can, by using a ETL, that is extracting, transforming, and loading the data into the Lakehouse. Want to load the transform data, it is better to use you can either load as a file or a delta table. Okay, either as a file or a delta. So whenever you want to go through the Spark, the data engineers use the notebooks. Okay, Have you guys used the notebook so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes, PySpark.
Yeah, in the PySpark, you have used the Jupyter notebook, right? But in case of here, there is a note, okay, which is almost like a Jupyter notebook to create the PySpark code or a Scala Spark code or a SQL Spark code. Okay, that we can use to transform the data and load that into a Lakehouse. Or you can also use something called Data Flows Gen 2, which is used by the developers, okay, to transform and load the data into the Lakehouse. Okay, and you can build the pipelines by using a data factory, okay, to perform the ETL and load the data into the Lakehouse. Okay, we created the Lakehouse, we ingested the data, and we are looking at how do we explore the data, transform the data, and load it into the Lakehouse. Okay, you have analyzed the data. What will you do next? And I brought it up. Whoever is very attentive, they will get it. Okay. So Parveen, after analyzing and loading the data, what will you do?
Loading the data. After that, we'll be creating the reports.
Correct. Okay. So what we'll do is after exploring and transforming the data, we'll analyze and visualize the data in the Lakehouse. Okay. So after the data is ingested, transformed, and loaded, it is ready. Parveen's biryani, so that others can start having it. Okay. Now we have to say, since everybody is in love with the biryani in the class, like our Anna is also in love with the biryani. Okay. And I think, yeah, Malini is into dosa and idli. Okay. So since everybody is like biryani, like in the same way, by processing all the data which is loaded into the Lakehouse, it is ready for others to use. Okay. So Fabric items, you can use the tools to get the data from the Lakehouse. Okay. Some of the people who would be wanting to use the data in Lakehouse are data scientists. They can use the notebooks and write a Spark queries. Okay. Or data wrangler is like wrangling means how do you control the data? Like wrangle means basically in the circus, they wrangle the animals, like in the same way. We can kind of control the data. We can get the data what we want to do. Data scientists can get the data from the Lakehouse so that they can feed that to the machine learning models. And we can have the report developers use the semantic model to create the Power BI reports. And also we can have the analysts to use the SQL analytics endpoint so that they can write a SQL queries to filter, aggregate, or explore the data in the Lakehouse tables. So once the data is there in the Lakehouse, depending upon who is accessing it, they can access it and they can do what they want. Data scientists use the data in the Lakehouse to feed it into the machine learning. Report developers use the semantic model to create the Power BI reports, and analysts will use the SQL analytics endpoint to query the data and create their own reports or the analysis. Okay, so this is what is the end goal of Lakehouse. Okay, I think we completed the Lakehouse. That's all for now. Like and subscribe and turn on notifications for future videos. Thank you.